The desert was silent, but the sky was screaming with light. Thousands of stars looked down at me from the velvet blackness, and I felt like I was standing on the surface of another planet entirely. Then, through the darkness, I saw it, a tiny, flickering signal fire in the distance. Someone was lost in the deep heart of the canyon, and I was the only person left who knew the way through the shadows. Hello, adventurers! Welcome back to Enjoy English Stories. Are you ready for a journey to the American Southwest? Today, we are traveling to the vast, red rock world of the Grand Canyon, Arizona. This is a place of incredible scale, ancient history, and absolute silence. It is time for our shadowing practice. You know the rules by now. You must speak loud and clear. Do not just listen, imitate my voice. Match my speed, my pauses, and my emotion. Today's story is about Amara. She is a young woman who works at a high-altitude observatory, watching the farthest reaches of the stars. But one night, she has to leave her telescopes and use her ancient knowledge of the sky to save a life here on Earth. In this lesson, you will learn sophisticated vocabulary about astronomy, the high desert ecosystem, and celestial navigation. Are you ready to look up? Let's begin. My name is Amara. I am 25 years old, and I live in a small, sturdy wooden house built just a few miles from the south rim of the Grand Canyon. My world is painted in colors you cannot find anywhere else on Earth. Fiery orange, deep crimson red, dusty purple, and shimmering gold. During the day, the canyon is a giant, carved masterpiece of the Earth, a place where you can see millions of years of history in the layers of the rock. I work as a research assistant at a high-altitude observatory. When the sun goes down and the desert air becomes thin, cold, and incredibly clear, my workday begins. There are no city lights for 100 miles in any direction. Here, we have dark sky status, which means the night is truly black. When you look up, the Milky Way doesn't look like a faint cloud, it looks like a thick, glowing river of spilled milk and diamond dust flowing across the heavens. My job is to calibrate the massive telescopes, monitor the atmospheric pressure, and help senior scientists capture long-exposure photographs of distant, swirling galaxies. I love the heavy silence of the plateau. I love the humbling feeling that the universe is infinite and that we are just small observers of its majesty. One Friday night, a dry, hot wind began to moan across the desert plateau, rattling the windows of the observatory. The air smelled of dry sagebrush and parched earth. I was just finishing my midnight shift, checking the data on a supernova in a galaxy millions of light years away, when the local park ranger, David, called my radio. His voice was tight with worry. "Amara, we have a critical situation," David said, his voice crackling over the airwaves. "A group of 3 hikers is missing. They were supposed to return to the rim camp 6 hours ago. We found their vehicle at the trailhead, but there's no sign of them. We believe they took a wrong turn at the junction and headed into the lower, unmapped section of the canyon. Their GPS devices are useless down there because the rock walls are too deep and narrow to catch a satellite signal." I pulled over a topographic map and traced the lines with my finger. The lower canyon is a terrifying maze of narrow parts, crumbling limestone, and dangerous, sudden drops. "David, the moon is new," I reminded him. "It won't rise for another 4 hours, and even then, it will be a tiny sliver. It's pitch black down there." Even with flashlights, everything looks the same. I know, David replied. We've sent a rescue helicopter, but the shadows in the canyon are too deep. They can't see anything against the red rock. We need a ground guide, someone who knows their old ways. We need someone who can navigate by the stars without a compass. I didn't hesitate for a single second. I grabbed my heavy leather hiking boots, a powerful flashlight, a thermal blanket, and my hand-drawn star map. I drove my Jeep to the trailhead, the headlights cutting through the dusty air. The desert at night is a completely different world than the desert in the sun. It is alive. You can hear the haunting, high-pitched cry of a coyote, a woo, and the dry rustle of nocturnal creatures moving through the cacti. I stepped out of the Jeep and started my descent. The trail was narrow and covered in loose gravel. As I moved deeper, the massive walls of the canyon rose up around me like dark, silent giants. Soon, I could no longer see the path beneath my feet. The darkness was so thick it felt like water. I stopped, took a deep breath of the cold air, and looked straight up. Okay, I whispered to the silence. Focus. Polaris, guide me. I looked for the Big Dipper, then followed the pointer stars to find Polaris, the North Star. It hung there, a steady, unblinking point of light. Then I looked for the constellation Orion, the hunter. I saw his belt, 3 bright stars in a perfect diagonal line. By observing the exact angle of these constellations relative to the canyon rims, I knew my position with perfect accuracy. I knew exactly which direction the hidden spring was, and I knew where the dangerous dead-end trail began. I hiked for 2 hours, the beam of my flashlight cutting a lonely circle through the darkness. Step, slide, step. Step, slide, step. My legs were aching, and the wind was chilling my skin, but I kept my eyes moving between the ground and the heavens. Suddenly, as I rounded a sharp corner of jagged rock, I saw it, a tiny, flickering orange light. It wasn't a star, and it wasn't a reflection. It was a small, desperate fire at the bottom of a dry, sandy riverbed. I scrambled down the steep slope, my heart racing. There they were. 3 hikers were huddled together, looking exhausted, shivering, and absolutely terrified. One of them was sitting on the ground, his face pale with pain, clutching a badly twisted ankle. They had 1 small flashlight left, and its batteries were dying. Help is here. You're safe. I shouted. They jumped at the sound of my voice. When they saw me, their eyes went wide with a mixture of shock and intense relief. How? How did you find us? One of them asked, her voice trembling. Our phones died. The GPS failed. We thought we were going to die out here. I looked up at the glittering sky and smiled. I had the best map in the world, I said. The stars told me exactly where you were. I immediately went to work. I shared my water, gave them my thermal blankets, and used a sturdy branch and some medical tape to stabilize the injured hiker's ankle. We couldn't hike back up in the dark with an injury, so we had to wait for the helicopter. To keep them calm, I sat with them by their small fire and pointed at the sky. I told them the ancient stories of the constellations, of the Great Bear moving around the pole, of Orion the hunter chasing the bull, and of the Pleiades, the 7 sisters, sparkling like jewels. For a moment, they forgot their cold and their fear. They stopped looking at the dark rocks and started looking at the infinite beauty above them. They wondered at the scale of it all. A few hours later, the rescue helicopter returned. I used my high-powered flashlight to send a rhythmic signal in Morse code. The pilot spotted us instantly. Within 30 minutes, they were being lifted to safety. The next morning, I didn't go straight to bed. Instead, I sat on the very edge of the south rim and watched the sunrise. The sky turned from charcoal to violet, then to a soft, burning pink. The red rocks of the canyon began to glow as if they were on fire from within. I was exhausted, my boots were covered in dust, and my muscles were stiff, but I felt a deep, unbreakable connection to the universe. I am Amara, and I learned that the stars are not just beautiful lights or distant balls of gas. They are our oldest maps, our most faithful guides. Sometimes, to find your way on the ground, you have to keep your eyes fixed on the heavens. Life can often feel like a dark, confusing canyon where you are lost and alone, but there is always a light to guide you if you only know where to look. What an incredibly inspiring story! Amara proved that ancient knowledge is just as important as modern technology. Have you ever stood under a truly dark sky and seen the Milky Way? It is an experience you will never forget. Now, it is time for our final shadowing session. This story was long and filled with complex, beautiful descriptions. I want you to go back to the beginning of part 2. Repeat every sentence with me. Focus specifically on the pronunciation of observatory, navigation, constellation, and infinite. Try to copy the calm, steady tone of my voice and the sense of wonder as I describe the stars. If you love astronomy or the beauty of the desert, give this video a like. Subscribe to enjoy English stories and join our community of adventurers. Tell us in the comments. Do you know the names of any constellations in your language? Would you ever want to hike into the Grand Canyon? I can't wait to read your responses. See you in the next story. Goodbye.